Hi, I'm John Thompson. I am a printmaker and educator. I discovered printmaking, I don't know, 20 years ago, and sort of fell into the deep end of the pool. Almost all artists make prints, whether you're sculptors or others, ceramicists even, architects. What I find fascinating about it, it's one of the earliest forms. Once paper became available in the Western Hemisphere, about 1400, people started making woodcuts and printing them. And they were used for devotional objects or historical documents, and in the early days before Gutenberg, books. And that tradition, that woodcut tradition, continued down through this period. Everybody from Richard Serra to James Sienna to Chuck Close are all making big woodcuts. Well, today I'm going to show you how a large woodcut. I tend to work fairly large, and I work in all areas of printmaking. I've done everything: watercolor monotypes, oil monotypes. I do etchings, intaglio prints. I do a little bit of lithography. I need a printer to do that because I'm not wild about the process. I do a lot of silkscreen. I'm probably best known for my silk screens, but I also adore woodcuts, and I just experiment. Woodcuts are the most fun because they're aggressive, and you can really work through a lot of ideas and thoughts. And I love working big, and I'll show you how I work large. Made it to Montserrat College of Art. I'm just going to show you real quick. So, woodcut process. So when I start out, I usually start out with some sort of ink drawing on a piece of wood. And this is a new material for me. This is a bamboo plywood that I'm trying. And after I draw on this with the ink, paint on it with the ink, then it's a process of spending hours carving out with tools that you need to keep very sharp. And it just is a long, long process. What's a great thing about woodcuts, though, is that once you've carved out a board, you can keep it and use it over and over again the way I do. And I mix them up and use them and move them around. So these boards, I've had some of my boards 10, 20 years, and I'm still using them. So that's the beginning process. What I'm going to show you is how I ink up and print something. I'm going to put a second layer on. So this is a board that's been carved and used before, obviously. The first thing we have to do is mix some ink. I'm going to work with a blue today, and I think what I'm going to do is do a toned down blue. So I'm going to put some blue ink out, and I'm going to dull this down with some, actually quite a bit of white ink. And I should have moved this just a little bit up here. And I think I'll tinge it with a bit of purple. Now, if I use the ink straight out of the tube or out of the can, it's going to be way too thick. It will not, it won't have a transparency. And what I love about making these prints, particularly these colored prints, is the kind of colored mixture you can get. Yellow and red making orange, for example. This is an example of some of the transparencies where you're getting these overlays of colors where the red is over the blue and just the various colors on top of each other. I mean, this weird combination of blues and yellows in here is so different than the straight blue that you see somewhere else. Still, it's not as white as I want, so I'm going to add a big glob of white. There we go. And I like that slightly purple tinge we have going on there. So I'm going to add just a bit of, just the tiniest bit of red. You can always add more. You can never take it away. There we go. So I've got a nice purple. Notice how thick that ink is. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put a lot of transparent base in here.
Looks like taffy.
It's wonderful, isn't it? That's still much stickier than I want it. So then what I do is I thin it down with a little bit of oil. For this we use burnt plate oil, which is part of what ink is made from. It's one of the base components in making ink, and see it gets much softer. Now this is a huge amount of ink. Most people wouldn't use this much ink in a week, but you'll see that I tend to do it. And I have various applicators for doing this. Yeah, when you wonder about the cost of art, guys, this brayer alone is a $300 tool. This one tool. This tube of ink, you know, one of these tubes of ink, and I've squeezed out a whole tube here. That's 20 bucks worth of ink. A sheet of the paper that I use can be $80 depending where you get it. Today I'm going to use a smaller brayer that I like just because it's a nice size. So I've mixed my ink up in one spot, and what I'm doing now is I'm putting down what we call a bead, or a what I'm going to do is fairly contained mess. So it's nice and covered. Now what I'm going to do is apply it to the board. And I'm going to play around with this for a little while. Even the ink out. So I'm going to take this now over to the press. And this is my French tool. It's a 40 by 70 inch press. And I have some starts here. And the idea is to add another layer. And I'm looking at how intense I want this to be. And I think we'll experiment on this one. You know, one of the great things about woodcuts is you can print them in lots of ways. So you can print them with these expensive presses, but you can also print them with fairly simple tools called barons. Some of the largest wood prints I know. So if I use this, I can sort of get the same effect as a press is going to get. Old two doorknobs glued together trick. And it works in the same way. It just takes a lot longer. The reason you use the press is it's delivering more pressure. It can transfer more of the ink faster. If you're doing larger woodcuts, as I do, it saves a lot of time and a lot of elbow grease. This press was designed to do etchings. So I'm going to pull it up and see if I've got the right pressure. That's pretty subtle, but I wanted it pretty subtle, but I want a little more than that. So I'm going to put the print back down, tighten the press just a little bit. And you always tighten it the same turns on each. There's about 1,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. which can do a lot of damage. You don't want to get your hand caught in there. So I can tell already, just looking at this, how much more ink transferred with that tightening up. That kind of fun? It's kind of fun, isn't it? What I'm going to do is take this back over. So the woodblock is smaller than the print I'm making. So what I do, somebody described this as John creates his matrices, and I use them as drawing tools. I move them around. So I'm using this, and I'll move it and repeat patterns in different ways so that you get the effect. You know, this blue printed down here, but not on this upper end. So now what I'm going to do is put it down and print the other part of it. More dramatic.
It's so cool.
It's a little starker. Isn't that fun? What the public doesn't realize is that there's a huge, huge difference between original prints and prints that are considered part of etchings or monoprints, other types of prints, and then the digital reproductions that are sold as G-clay or department store prints or other things. Those aren't art. They will not increase in value. They're nice decoration for your wall. But if you want real art and true art, you should look and learn more about prints. I discover one thing and it just gives me more ideas to do something else. And it's like you find a little success and think that's interesting. And what would happen if I did X, Y, and Z and changed it around again? And I'm looking at this little bit in here and just finding that fascinating. But now I have to think about what's going over that and what will change it again.
When do you know you're done?
When it speaks to you. And this is a really funny story, Sarah. I have had pieces that I've considered done that I've sent out of a studio. And I may see them someplace, or they may be on loan or at a gallery and come back, and I am just appalled that I sent them out. Just cannot believe that I allowed something like that out of my studio, and I have to start over again, change it. I've taken stuff out of frames and reworked them. All of my work is based on water and reflections and looking through water, light, leaves, twigs, whatever. So it changes every minute. If you think about looking at a pond or being near the ocean or something, it's always moving. It's never the same. So whatever I make is always a fleeting moment and can get changed again pretty instantly. And that's what happens.